If I ruled the world, I love them, baby.
Hello and welcome to episode number 18 of If I Ruled the World podcast. With our guest, we're sitting here with our guest, Brian Deneeve.
Hey, guys.
Finally legal.
Yeah, finally. Finally, after all these years.
So much better. So Brian was nice enough to take the train out to Long Island. And what's really cool is I gave him a few options. I was like, okay, we can do this in a few ways. We can come to you. You can come to us, or we can do it over the phone. And he picked the hardest option for himself.
Yeah, that's wild.
So Brian, I've known you since the days of Domain.
Indeed.
I think that would be a cool place to start this interview and talk about that. Was that your first band?
It was.
Get you.
Yeah, sorry. All right. So it was not my first band, but it was my first band that. Yeah, sure. That started playing shows and doing, playing with other bands, I should say, right? And playing with real bands,
right?
Which is, I'm air quoting real bands. So that was like 97 or something, or 98, right?
Well, you tell me. It was when you saw. I probably met you like around then, but knew you better like 99 when Earthling would play with you guys.
Exactly.
And,
yeah. So right. So we started off as kind of just this metal band.
Right.
It was really much more metal in the beginning.
Okay. Yeah.
And then sort of became heavier while becoming less sort of Iron Maiden-ish metal, you know. And that was around the time when when Earthling and Domain started playing together, and we started playing with Rick, and Subterfuge and all those bands at this place called the Cesspool.
Cesspool?
Right?
I don't remember.
The Cesspool was a place in Smithtown, and it was. I think Rick may have.
Rick's the king of Smithtown.
Booked it for
Rick
whatever
who?
that.
Jimenez.
Well, I know that, but maybe the listener doesn't.
Okay.
All right, yeah, fair enough.
Rick from This Is Hell.
Right.
Rick, This Is Hell. Richter Fuge is
Richter Fuge,
which is what I would have called him, back
Extinction
then.
AD.
Exactly. Who's a great dude. And so Rick played drums in Subterfuge.
Right.
At the time, and so there was Subterfuge and this band Center of Zero, which they were a great sort of metal-ish hardcore band, so there were a few bands that Rick was sort of very instrumental in bringing together at that time.
Yeah.
And so my band Domain was sort of simultaneously playing these shows at this place, the Cesspool, which is just like, I think it was like almost, it wasn't an abandoned house, but it was a house that nobody lived in. I guess that's abandoned.
The definition of abandoned.
I suppose, but like there was electricity.
Right.
So somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one lived there,
right.
But there was somebody was paying something.
Right.
No one lived there that you knew of.
Right. So I'm sort of cautious to say abandoned, because that implies that it was like this empty place where we had generators and stuff. That wasn't really the case. But yet there was nothing other than hardcore shows going on in the basement. So I don't know, whatever.
Right, I missed the Cesspool era.
It didn't last very long, but it was a good time.
You were too busy on a label playing big shows with
Well, what year was this?
This is sort of, I would guess, sort of for you, George, like sort of end of Day in the Life, beginning middle of Earth. This covered that era.
Yeah.
I suppose. And then definitely carried over into the Earthling time. And so my band, for some reason, which was definitely, I'd say, the heaviest, band of all these.
Yeah.
Was totally comfortable playing with Earthling Massive or Earthling and Subterfuge was like sort of like a punk hardcore band, and Center of Zero and all these other bands that so that was sort of the time when it was cool, and we really sort of were into the idea of being the heavier band.
Yeah, you can't go wrong on a bill.
That's the thing, right? Like it was kind of like
It's not a bad move.
well, I don't want to not be the heaviest band.
Yeah.
Like, if you have to be the most of something,
Right. Because then you could leave like scorched earth if you're first,
Right.
or crush if you're last.
right.
So-
And if you're not doing that, then if you're sort of the medium heavy band,
Yeah, you better
then
be good.
You better be awesome.
Yeah.
You better be awesome.
You better
So-
be better than good. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But that was also really cool. I think at the time was playing with Earthling and stuff, because it was so different.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were unbelievable. I mean, to this day, I think Earthling was one of my favorite. I don't want to say bands, right? But one of my favorite sort of. Those Earthling demos were some of my favorite recordings.
Yeah.
And still are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah, it was super
Thanks, man.
ambitious. Super
Yeah, well, I mean-
ambitious. Like what you guys were trying to do. Or
Yeah.
definitely.
That's a great way to put it. It was very ambitious, and
it was totally ambitious.
Yeah.
But it was ambitious in a noble way. It was not ambitious for the sake of like, oh, well, let's just do this because there's
right, what costumes are we gonna wear?
Exactly. It wasn't like that at all. It
There was
was
no costume.
you guys were doing things, and I'll never forget and correct me if I'm wrong. It may have been the first Earthling, the first real show at that place, Funky Fish.
Oh, yeah.
The Funky Fish. Was it the first show? I think you're correct. Yeah, I think that was the first show. We played there a few times.
Yeah, but I remember being there, and it was, and I do think it was the first show.
Yeah.
And I remember it just being
Yes, it was.
wall to wall packed, and thinking like, oh man, these guys, like, just man for man and woman for woman,
Right.
they know how to do it. Like they had it dialed in before the first show, and to me that was something that really sort of carried through in my career. Even it was just they knew how to do it before they actually did it.
I feel like Brian's trying to talk up a reunion.
Well, thanks,
The
Brian.
Earthling Massive reunion would be amazing.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
No,
but,
I
you know.
can't imagine it would, but
You know, I like
the
to keep
Funky
memories
Fish.
intact.
Exactly.
You know?
Right,
At the
right,
Funky
right.
Fish.
At the Funky
Funky
Fish. What do you think's there right now? A Chipotle or something?
No, I wish, because I live close. I live in West
I
Babylon,
wish there was a Chipotle there.
and I drive by it, and I don't even think there's anything there. There's like just an abandoned building.
Right.
So
But Brian, you passed the first test. There's the first check in the box that when you come here, you have to praise one of my bands.
Yeah.
Now we can move on.
Okay, cool.
We checked that box.
We'll
Sam
we'll
just
praise another band now. Yeah,
we'll
okay,
just
cool.
click that off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
That's the prerequisite. You got
Cool.
the form. You filled it out.
Fair
No,
enough.
you're correct.
Waiver is filled. Yeah.
yeah, after the train ride, we're like, all right, now you have to praise George for a minute. Now we can move on.
Now we
Right.
can move on. This is
Gotcha.
what we do.
All right.
And
And you mentioned one of our sponsors, Chipotle.
Really?
yeah,
Really?
Oh, it's like, whoa! I'm starving.
You
so
never
you're
know.
a gold mine.
All
See?
right. Yeah. Wow. All right.
You
cool.
never know.
Yeah, I'll say.
So, how did you get into From Motive to Ashes from Domain? Domain was a smaller, local, I feel like the Patchogue connection, Suffolk County,
Right.
Doing what you can on Long Island, hardcore. How did you meet the guys with From Motive to Ashes, or how did that work?
Okay, so yeah, you're absolutely right. Domain was very much sort of in the eastern Suffolk County scene, for whatever that's worth. And we had played a bunch of shows in Nassau County, so far away, and
Cross Island thing.
right, exactly, yeah, 25 minutes away. It was really something, and I'm not, it's funny, I'm not entirely sure. I do know that I was at a house party
Okay.
somewhere, and and those guys were there. The
Okay.
From On the Ashes guys were there because they were already a band,
Right.
They had made a demo, and they had, I think, just been signed to Ferret.
Okay.
But
Really? As a 4-piece?
no, it wasn't a 4-piece. They were a 5-piece. this guy Steve was playing guitar.
Old man Steve.
Old man Steve was playing guitar, right?
Forgot about that. Oh,
But
you're right.
right, but when the band got signed to Ferret, they had all decided like, okay, well, we're gonna go on tour. We're gonna treat this like a real thing because sort of at the time, that was a thing where like, okay, well, now we can all go on tour and actually maybe spend a few years doing this, as opposed to, as a few years before, even on big labels, right? Okay, well, yeah, we can't really do it, right? Unless, whatever. So they had decided, yes, we're gonna really try to make something of this,
Right.
And Steve, sort of had a good job, I guess, at the time. He was a few years older than everybody else. Hence
Old Man Steve.
Hence the title.
It's all coming together.
Yeah, it's
right. Yeah, exactly.
Hashtag that for the episode.
Right. So Steve, I get, sort of had to bow out and say like, sorry guys, my job is too good. I have health insurance, whatever it was. So they were looking for a guitar player or something. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know those guys really. I sort of peripherally knew them.
Yeah.
But that's it. And I met them at a house party. And I think I was just joking around. They were all actually straight edge at the time. And I certainly was not.
The opposite.
So they may have been the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I think they just thought I was funny. Or, maybe what I was doing was funny because I don't think of myself as being very funny. But we started talking and I guess we sort of, I don't know, connected on some level.
Yeah.
And a few days later, I got an email from Fran and he was like, hey man, do you want to come try out for the band? Steve's not, Steve can't do it, but we're going to record the first record in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And the songs were already written. You just needed to.
Songs were written, right? And it was like 10 or 12 songs. I don't remember. So you want to come audition? And I said, yeah, sure. So I came. So I learned, I don't know, a bunch of them in the next day or so. And I came and I played with them. And it was interesting because Old Man Steve was there. Sort of as I get it, right? Somebody who's like, somebody who's, on the panel, right? The American Idol sort of, the voice, right? He didn't have a chair that spun around, but whatever. And so I played the songs. We got into it, and they were like, yeah, we want you to be in the band. And I said, yeah, cool, let's do it. So then about 10 days later, we went and recorded the first record, which I didn't have any part in writing. I had a huge part in sort of playing, you're obviously right, but like adding my own parts on top of what
Steve already had his parts down, and so you just did that.
Well, no, none of it had been recorded at all yet. We recorded it up in Massachusetts with Adam D from Killswitch Engage.
Oh, okay.
And we went there for a few days to do it because the budgets were pretty small, and apparently Every Time I Die had gone over a day or two on their first record, taking away from our budget.
Your record?
It really did.
That's not right.
It actually took away like a day or two from ours, which is funny. So we ended up, Adam D ended up like mixing it all in one overnight session, which is the craziest thing I've ever.
Idea. Yeah.
No, it's a terrible idea, but it had to be done, right?
Yeah.
There was, the budget was very small, and whatever. And that was that. So then it was all of a sudden I was just in the band, and we started touring, and that was really it.
So you guys jumped on tour. I mean, how big was From Mortem to Ashes before all of that? Because I still always remember them. I just remember them as always being somewhat big. But when you got into the band, it was still just starting to happen because you just got on Ferret.
Right. So From Mortem to Ashes, when I joined the band on Long Island, I thought that From Autumn to Ashes was big.
Yeah, maybe that's why I was thinking.
Because they had 3 songs on a demo that everybody liked.
Right.
And to be honest, and this isn't, I'm not saying this in a bad way because, we all know how things work.
Yeah.
Everybody in the band was really sort of cool with everybody around, and everybody was friends with everybody.
Yeah,
so
that's a thing. That
nobody,
works. Yeah.
nobody, they were not. They were coming off another band that was kind of cool with everybody too. So again, we all know how this works. It wasn't hard to get shows, to get good shows or anything. It wasn't starting from the ground. They weren't playing at noon at the bagel shop,
right?
So
and you saw their name on a lot of flyers,
on everything. It was sort of immediately
the ways that you got big. It got into your mind,
right.
of a band is maybe bigger than they are, or as big, or whatever.
Exactly, and I think that's probably how it's been forever.
Yeah,
and once you've sort of opened that door, then you're sort of in the club, right? You sit at the cool kids table, and that's what it is. And from where I was sitting at the time, which is not at the cool kids table necessarily,
right?
That band was sitting at the cool kids table,
right?
And I don't mean to be pejorative about it. It's not because I don't feel that way. It's just that's how it was, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty good description.
Yeah,
I get it.
It was just whatever, things had worked out for everybody, and that's what it was. And
it was like the beginning of that sound too. Like you figure, was it like 2001?
The record was 2001. So I'm thinking 2000.
Okay, yeah. Because by the time 2002 came around, like all those bands, like like the Killswitches, even like Shadows Fall, like all these bands were. It was like this like crazy resurgence. Even like Avenged Sevenfold had like that sound back then too. So crazy time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned those three bands, because those three bands were the bands that we from On the Ashes sort of toured with and sort of bonded with the most. Avenged Sevenfold specifically, we stayed at Matt M Shadows at his parents' house, and our van had broken down, and they were so gracious, and his parents had one day, our van had completely broken, and we didn't know what to do, and we woke up in the morning, our van was missing, and then a few hours later, Matt's mom brought it back. She had brought it to a repair shop and had it fixed for us. Like all these kinds of things. Like
that's
they
really
were
nice.
They were the most gracious people. And the same goes for, again, there was a connection with Killswitch, because while we were recording the first record with Adam D, I played my first show with From All Ashes in the middle of recording that record with Killswitch engaged in Boston. And then Shadows Fall, we toured
Overcast,
with...
right?
Exactly, right. So there was that's funny that you mentioned those three bands, because I with the exception of Sky Came Falling, I can't think of another band.
You're right. Sky Came Falling.
So those four bands, I would say, are the four bands that were very...
Sky Came Falling and your band, From Autumn to Ashes, have like a very similar sound. Obviously, Sky Came Falling doesn't have those type, like Fran type vocals,
right?
So, but I remember those bands because, like a mutual friend that, I don't know how you guys met Bob, but he started like tour managing for you, Bob Farley.
Yeah.
So how did that even come about?
It's funny. I don't remember how Bob started tour managing us, especially because, I think From Autumn to Ashes may have had more tour managers than any other band. And it was just because we didn't know what a tour manager was supposed to do.
He didn't either, don't worry.
No, I know. I mean, Christian McKnight tour managed us for a bit.
Yeah.
The first bus tour we ever did, Christian McKnight was at the helm. Not of the bus. He was at the helm, at least, of the band.
Isn't it just like a way of having like a sixth member that just handles everything?
Well, I think that depends. The definition depends on what level of a band you're at.
Yeah.
Right. At that level, sure. Yeah, it's somebody else who it's another member of the band who doesn't play an instrument, but and has to handle the stuff that the people who do play instruments.
Another driver when you're in a van,
right,
before the buses.
Yeah, that, or somebody who knows how to settle a show.
Yeah. Somebody
who knows, especially when settling shows starts becoming more than $50 or $30. I don't know. Or when they start taking... sorry, go.
Someone to advance the shows, too.
Exactly.
Back then, it was a little bit harder than it is probably today.
You're absolutely right. That advancing shows, merch rates and things like that, because the tour manager was also the merch guy, who was also this guy and that guy and blah blah blah. I mean, the tour managers of those guys they should be the name of the band. Really,
it's not an easy job. It's a
No.
very, very. Someone's always mad at the tour manager, even if the tour manager's cool.
Yeah,
it's chaos.
and that was like with Bob Farley. I mean, Bob Farley's the nicest guy in the world, like really, really the nicest guy in the world.
From Selden.
He is from Selden.
That's
You're absolutely right.
I
Yeah,
totally grew up here.
he
Unbelievable.
lives in Ohio though now, right? Or
Well,
something
yeah,
like
because
that?
he met somebody on a FATA tour, and I guess you stayed in touch. I mentioned this on the last episode with Eddie.
With Eddie.
Yeah, and he just, the type of guy that he is, he just, listen, the guy left Brooklyn and fucking New York to go move to fucking Mansfield, Ohio.
Where is Mansfield?
I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't even know if it really exists. But he,
Sounds like a made-up name.
I'd
Where do you
say,
live?
Mansfield?
Mansfield.
So, but he just, he's happy doing his thing. I can't comprehend it, but, I guess he took one of my best friends away. So shout out to them.
Yeah, I mean, Bob was a great guy. Bob took a lot of the early hits.
I bet.
Really,
I know, because I was not really playing in bands, and growing up with him, we were best friends, and he was going on tour with you guys, and he would be like, I would just hear these stories, but in my head, it wasn't my world yet, so I didn't really care or know. So he's like, yeah, his band keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we keep doing this, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay. I didn't really have anything to.
Right.
I think I was probably coming home from rehab or something, because I was away for 2 years.
Sounds about
So
right.
Fair
I came
enough,
home in
right?
2000, so I think everything was kind of popping off by then.
Right.
Could you imagine being the tour manager though, having to corral
No.
5 or 6 guys? We on the way here, me and Brian were talking about a friend we know, a friend we love. We could talk about his talent all day long.
Yeah.
But the one thing we said was because he was almost going to maybe get into a band, and we were like, can you imagine having to tour with the guy? Because you got to get him to the show, or he's just going to walk off with a bunch of people from the show.
Right.
And that's what the tour manager has to handle.
Right. The actual playing would have not been a problem.
Not a problem.
Like, the guy could show up even in his worst state and could have nailed it. The problem would be to find where he is or where he was.
Sam's trying to guess who it is, but we're not going to tell you.
Oh, I have a few in my head.
Yeah, there's probably more than one you can guess.
Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've just described a lot of people that we all know.
But you have to think of it even Guns N' Roses or people from that level where it's like, has anyone seen Slash?
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
Wait, where?
Well, and really, it's interesting because the more sort of the bigger the artist gets, right? The bigger the band gets,
Yeah.
the more specific the tour manager's job becomes,
Right.
right? At our level, right? At the band level, right? The tour manager's job is super broad. The tour manager advances shows. He takes care of the promoter. He does this. He does that. He helps with whatever. He does everything.
Right.
He books hotels. Whatever. At the highest level, the tour manager literally holds the hand of the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Wow. Like
And
The Wanted, when you were in The Wanted. I'm
Well,
sure
this
you
is
saw
where
it.
I'm coming
Yeah.
from, right? So I understand
You saw it
both
at
ends of these
many
things.
levels, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. So so the tour manager literally only deals with the star,
Right.
whoever that might be, and they don't book hotels. They don't do any of that. There's somebody else who does that.
Right.
There's a travel agent who does that, and then a production manager who handles that, and
Right.
blah 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 blah. The tour manager's job drastically changes and drastically gets paid a lot more.
For doing somewhat less, is that
For
where
doing
you're
somewhat less, but the responsibility, I
Is
think,
yeah.
is much greater.
Right.
Like
you
get
know.
them to the Greek.
Right.
Yeah, I guess something like that. I never saw it, but I think
It's
I
pretty
understand
much like
what,
that. Yeah,
what it
like
is.
like they need to babysit Russell Brand.
Right. And I think yeah, for certain people that's an easy job,
Right.
right? But for certain people it's not.
Not. There's
You
a lot
know-
more on the line, and there's a lot more things if it gets screwed up. And this guy, like if you're the tour manager of a famous artist and he's not so reasonable, and let's just assume that a few of them aren't so reasonable.
Why would you ever think that?
You're the one he's going to yell at.
Exactly.
Because you got to piece all the, everything together and make sure that it all...
And especially if you like the shit that you're trying to keep that person away from.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other
It's like,
problem.
wait, titties and Coke? Like, all right, we can't do this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot. I know a lot of tour sort of bigger tour managers who are very, very much either in recovery or there's they wouldn't call themselves straight edge, I guess, because they didn't come from they would just they're people that don't partake, and if they do, they certainly don't do it on the clock. They take it very seriously. Again, because it's worth a lot.
Stakes are higher.
Exactly. And the job is that much bigger.
Right.
So, whereas if Bob, I mean, I love Bob, but if Bob, if I didn't turn up,
it's not Bob's fault.
It's not. But no, Bob doesn't care.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially then.
Exactly.
I think he said as things were getting more serious that you guys had to get someone that was like a real tour manager. So.
And I think that's sort of what you were about to say before is I think Bob sort of, I think, really said, like, guys, this is getting to a point where I don't know, I don't know what to do with this. And we love Bob. Bob was a great tour, and Bob actually negotiated the hardest transition, at least as far as I'm concerned, from going from playing in people's basements to playing, places that were.
Was that on the first tour?
It was through several tours. No, the first tour we didn't have a tour manager at all. I think we had Smalley. I think we had Smalley through the 10th tour, but we had Smalley through most of it. If you're listening, Smalley.
He will be. I'm sure he will.
Oh, he will be, definitely.
Then it's also like you're a tour manager. You're getting to, like, say, bigger shows and bigger tours. That tour manager doesn't know the ropes, and he's walking in to meet the other tour managers, and those guys know what they're doing. It's the same thing with, like, sound men. It's the same thing with, like, you pull up in a van and everyone else has got a bus.
Yep.
And, like, this thing, you kind of, like, don't realize it till you're in it. And you're like, we're missing out on things because our tour manager doesn't understand what to do because he's our friend. We need someone who could go in there and be like, no, this was supposed to be on the rider.
Yep.
And it sounds weird if you're not in a band, but these are the things you count on, and to get the things that you need, or the club owner that disappears.
Exactly.
They do that on Almost Famous, the movie. Like, where, like, the Jimmy Fallon character comes in and he's trying to, like,
Jimmy Fallon's in that movie?
He's incognito, though.
Really?
You probably missed him. Yeah. I didn't realize till like a long time after I saw it, and he's trying to take the place of the old manager, and he's telling them all that shit. It's like, you guys could be getting this. That's him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you guys could be getting this.
I didn't know that.
Blowing my mind.
Yo, believe me, I'm telling you, it's been on cable a while.
I need to hang out with Sam for a little while.
I'll say.
He just drops in these gems.
I need to take out my notebook too. I gotta write this down.
We took Red River.
Yeah. That's it.
Totally. It gets super geeky.
When anything gets too geeky, I say save it for Red.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would imagine, like, even like you were talking about the cool kids table, it's like, you do come in and you see those tour managers and you're like, shit, I don't even know what the fuck, what's going on here. So how were, like, those first tours going into, like, the next record?
You mean in the very beginning?
Yeah, like, so, because the first record was Ferret, and then you guys went to Vagrant, right? For the second.
Yep.
Yeah. So how does that happen?
Okay, so
Vagrant was huge at that time.
At the time, yeah. So that first record, which again had a very small budget that Every Time I Die ate into as well. I'll say it again. It sort of it exceeded everybody's expectations, and it ended up becoming a big record. So a record that cost a couple of $1,000s to make over the course of a week ended up selling well over 100,000 copies.
Wow, I did
not
know that.
And that was back when people actually bought CDs.
Right.
So those were actual physical copies. And it happened really quickly, and it was kind of like, Oh, okay. Well, so by the time I think we toured on that record for a year and a half before we started thinking about what we were going to do next. Just because when you're in that situation, right, these things just keep popping up and they keep saying, okay, this is the next thing.
Tour,
this is the next thing, right? And you just keep doing it. And it's finally like, okay, well, it's time to start thinking about what to do next. And by that point, it had gotten pretty big. I mean, by that point, it went from playing in people's basements that had been flooded, literally, where you're like, oh man, I'm gonna be electrocuted at this gig. The cesspool was dry every time.
Or the Charleston,
despite
in
the name, right? Yeah, right. But you're on the right track with that. I distinctly remember some shows where we were playing in water, and I was like, this can't
be not dangerous.
Exactly, this can't be not dangerous, and oh man, yeah. What happens if I get electrocuted here? Like, this is before cell phones or anything. Like, no one's gonna know who I am. I'm just some dude who
no one's gonna have the good sense to save me
at all. And they're certainly not gonna save my guitars or anything like that.
Not the guitars.
No. Which are now my first concern. Not my health is my second.
Always.
Right. Yeah.
Believe me.
But so it went from that pretty quickly to several hundred people, in venues that had stages, and electricity and no water on the floor.
Vagrant come sniffing around, or
okay. So what happened was we started. So Carl from Ferret before I guess while he was running Ferret, he had previously worked at Roadrunner. You must know Carl, right? Carl Severson?
I'll just say yeah.
Sure, yeah. Anyway, so Carl worked at Ferret and obviously owned Ferret, worked at Roadrunner, and this guy Corey Brennan was the head of marketing at Roadrunner at the time. And Corey was trying to manage bands, and Carl was like, oh, I think you guys should talk to Corey to be your manager, because we were still self-managing and it was becoming out of control.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to do. So we were like, yeah, sure. So Corey had just left Roadrunner, and he got a job working as a manager for Sanctuary, which at the time, it was owned by Iron Maiden's manager, and it was this big kind of English thing. So he ended up becoming a manager there, and we decided, all right, yeah, we'll meet him, and we met him, and Corey was like, yeah, I want to manage you guys. And we were like, okay, well, this is big time dude, they manage Iron Maiden and Robert Plant and Morrissey,
Jesus.
like all these.
Damn.
It was awesome. And so we were like, yeah, sure, of course, this is exactly what we want to do, and it was exactly what we wanted to do at the time. So that happened, and that's sort of where things really sort of stepped up to this new level. But at the same time, it really did kind of create this division between, okay, well, we want to bring you, we being them, want to bring you guys into it, sort of the next level, and not the Ferret Records level. And that was a weird thing, because we didn't have a real contract with Ferret. It was a handshake thing, as they were, right? And so we did. So we went and we started recording that next record in Vancouver. The Fiction We Live in Vancouver with Garth Richardson, who had done all these big bands, and we were like, yeah, this is the dude. He was the dude.
You weren't on Vagrant yet, so you were recording it for Ferret.
We were recording.
Who was paying Garth Richardson?
No. This is so we were. Corey Brennan, the manager, fronted the money.
Smart.
Fronted the money because he knew that it was Ferret wanted. Vagrant wanted to talk to us. Interscope at the time, which was working with Ferret. Island sent a guy. So all these labels, some bigger and some smaller, sent a bunch of people up to Vancouver, this island in Vancouver where we're recording it, and
far from the cesspool, man. I mean,
far from the cesspool.
Did
This
you
was,
ever
this was like
think
a year and a half later from the cesspool.
That's one of those moments where you're like, wow, okay, this is pretty unbelievable.
I've had so many of those moments.
Yeah,
yeah.
Very cool.
And I guess they all sort of stem from, from these moments, right?
And what a good position to not have, like, you signed 7 records and who knew your record was going to do that well, and now you're stuck with something maybe you don't want. So now you're actually in a good position.
Right. We were only signed to the manager at that point, which we were like sort of thrilled with anyway. Yeah. And so basically the manager fronted the money for the record, and we were recording the record and doing the record, and at the time, all these labels were sending people up to talk to us. So that's what we did. And we finally decided on Vagrant for a bunch of reasons. And it went on from there. We signed to them for 3 records. And at the time, though, Vagrant was like...
Vagrant was the shit.
May as well have been,
For like our world.
Absolutely.
Like, whoa, you guys have Face to Face and Alkaline Trio and like, which
but
was
Alkaline
different.
Trio was massive at the time too. I mean, we ended up touring with them on that record.
Okay, wow.
On Good Morning.
Wow.
Which was, it wouldn't have been for any other reason than we were just on the label. You know? But it was a pretty crazy time.
Yeah.
For that, for sure. And it was a strange sort of segue into. I don't want to call it the big leagues because it really wasn't, but it was the biggest leagues, the biggest league that any of us could.
Especially for the type of music.
Yeah, for the type of music.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't like
when the Get Up Kids and Alkaline Trio and Saves the Day were the other bands on the label, and then we turn up.
Right.
You guys were still the heaviest band on the.
There you go.
And it all comes full circle, right? You still want to be the heaviest band on the gig.
Yeah.
So like, oh, we're heavier than the Get Up Kids. Yeah, we'll sign.
We'll do the show.
Right. Yeah, we'll totally do it. Right.
So what's like the band dynamic at this point? Everyone's just getting along and just writing songs?
From Autumn to Ashes?
Yeah. Like when you hit Vagrant. Because I know once like money comes in, like everyone was still doing the 5-way split. Everyone's like, oh, fuck it.
Right. So yeah. So, it was good. It was all right. We were sort of all very much kind of new to the whole thing. We didn't know what to do.
And Mike had left by then.
Mike had not left by then.
Oh, really?
So we're still talking about the first record with Vagrant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Mike had not left.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, my timeline was fucked up.
Mike left after that. So Mike did the record. It was all good. We were we did the thing. We started realizing that we were part of this bigger thing. Which is I know, George, I'm sure when you were on Roadrunner and stuff, all of a sudden you're like,
we were on TVT.
Oh, TVT, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
of course.
You're thinking of different things. You're thinking in a bigger way. Like we were saying before, we were like, hey, just give us a T-shirt guy in a van. But then you show up and everybody's got a sound guy.
Yeah.
I never thought about a sound guy.
Right.
And it was like, we need a sound guy. We were just constantly calling back like certain things that you just never thought about before. And then it's like, well, they have an inward monitor guy. Maybe we could pay the guy to do the inward monitor. Just never thought about it.
Right. And hang on, everybody else is showing up rested and clean because they're on a bus. And we just drove 14 hours straight from the last gig, which was in, wherever. And
it's routed for a bus.
And that's also the problem, right?
That's a totally different touring schedule.
Exactly, and it's a different world.
Right.
So that is sort of that was kind of where we were at the time, is being the like, oh, okay, well, but we can get a lot of people in a room, but and I guess we could sort of afford something, but we still can't pay. We're not getting paid.
Well, you guys must have quit your jobs by then.
We had totally quit our jobs. So we only survived because we were on tour. 12 months, 11 and a half months out of the year collectively. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it was like, you can survive if you don't have a home to pay bills at, or if you don't have normal bills.
Right.
And that was kind of where it was. We were all sort of young enough to do that.
Right,
And
but it's not a money-making thing where you're walking away
God,
on a
no.
tour with money.
It was, I don't know, it must have been several tours in. I mean, really, I distinctly remember a time when I was handed $500 cash at the end of a tour and thinking like, cool, all right. So this is the first time I didn't have to like, sort of sell something when I got home in order to pay my whatever. I didn't have a phone at the time, but I'm sure I had some sort of bill to pay.
Yeah.
And I remember getting $500 and thinking like, all right, well that was like
That's good work.
3 weeks of playing shows every night and that's great.
Because even when you're starting to get bigger, on bigger tours, you got to make yourself a little cheaper to get on the tours.
Exactly.
And that's maybe another dynamic people don't understand is like they might see you on bigger shows, but on your way up, part of that is a little sacrifice in your guarantee.
Right. Even if you're playing, even if you're supporting an arena band, people go to the arena shows, right? And they see the opening band. They're like, oh, look at these rock stars.
Yeah.
Those guys are still, just splitting their Denny's, perhaps.
It's per diem and a couple $100.
Exactly. They're because that headlining band is not spending a lot of money on that first of three.
Right.
If there's three, And so there's a real it's rough.
Takes longer than people think.
Exactly. Yeah. It really does. So especially then.
Yeah. Yeah.
When that was sort of a new thing, when bands coming from this world
right
started to sort of break into bands that actually made money.
Right.
To that world.
And that was like the end right? That was like the end of like record sales kind of around that time, right?
That probably started, but there was still like
they still sold records, yeah.
But it was like a changeover too. I feel like the quote unquote like screamo and emo, was getting bigger. Right. It was breaking past like the big hardcore bands we knew,
right?
Like Sick of It All and stuff like that. It was breaking past all this stuff. We on Fuse,
right?
And things like that, and it was just hitting this level, and you were right on top of all of that.
Yeah, and it was a weird thing.
Yeah,
it really was.
So when because I know there was a time Scott Gross was out, John Cox was in. Yep. What era was that?
Totally forgot John was in.
Yeah, John was in for a long time.
Yeah.
John recorded a record.
The last record?
Nope, the second to last record.
Oh, okay.
So
I just saw John at Memorial Day.
Did you?
And I was like, I'm getting Brian Deneeve on. He's like, I was going to say that, man. You need to get Brian on.
John Cox, they don't make them better than John Cox. They really, really don't. I would love to talk to John Cox at any point. John, when you hear this, if you hear this, call me.
Yeah,
call me.
He's the best, man.
Yeah, he is. So Scott, ended up leaving the band. After that record, after touring that record for a bit, we had some. I think we had like a Japan tour or something sort of imminent, and we were thinking like, well, what do we do? And I said, well, I know a guy, and it was John, and I sort of called John, I guess because I don't think we texted then, right? I don't think that's what you did.
Not to the frequency we do.
Right, yeah, I don't think I would have texted him. I certainly would have emailed him.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I called him, and I said, hey man, can you learn? And I think at the time it was just for it may have just been for like a couple of Japan gigs or something like that. It was something very short, and
I remember.
And
I don't know how I forgot.
John was like, yeah, I'll learn the stuff, and he came in. I remember we only had time for one rehearsal before we left for Japan, and John came in, and nailed everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, you see, guys, I told you. You see? I got this.
Yeah.
And John was amazing as he is. He's an incredible guitar player.
Yeah,
he's just a fantastic guy.
I think you brought him like he was a time he wasn't really playing too. I think he stopped playing in Earthling.
Yep.
He kind of maybe was doing some stuff at home, but he wasn't playing in a band.
He wasn't in a band or anything. No.
And then you sort of like brought him like, oh, you're not playing? get a load of this.
Right. Oh, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it was Japan. Japan was later. It was we were starting a headlining tour or a co-headlining tour with that band Atreyu.
Okay.
And they were really big at the time too.
Huge.
And we had a sort of a pretty big crew at the time and stuff, and we flew out to meet our tour bus. I mean, it was this bizarre sort of surreal thing.
Wow, yeah.
And John sort of, met us at the airport to get on an airplane to fly out to get on a tour bus to go then start this big headlining tour playing 2,000 or 3,000 seat place or whatever capacity places. And I remember the first time when we sat down on the plane together, John said, I feel like that kid, I don't know, let's call him Little Danny. Little Danny just got his wish come true. And I was like, okay, well, you're Little Danny from now on. And so from then on, John was just Little Danny. Yeah.
that's
and that was it. So John Cox was Little Danny for his entire tenure of the band. But John was amazing. That was another sort of pivotal time when it was John was kind of in the band when the band was at the biggest, which is an interesting thing to jump into.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, somebody who wasn't necessarily playing with anybody or anything at the time. I just knew that he was a great guy and
it's like a stand-up guy, like someone you could rely on. If he said he's going to do it, he's going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And somebody who had the chops.
Yeah.
He could play.
Yeah.
And was a creative guy and just a good guy to be around as well. So
yeah.
And again, knowing John was another product of that summer of 1999. That we were talking about earlier. So
yeah, there's a lot of crazy stories.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say and it's cool to be in a position that you were in to basically not help John, but at least offer someone that you liked that much and respected, to come out of almost obscurity, to be like, hey, to play these, this venue, for someone so deserving. Like we said the same thing to Dave Case.
Yeah.
Right? Here you are, one of the best musicians, one of the best harmonizers I've ever heard in my life, and now you're in Helmet.
Right.
After all this time, you are where you're supposed to be.
Right. Not starting another local band.
Yeah.
That, here's a chance for you to show off what you got.
And that, I think, was, for John, that was the Little Danny moment, for him. And it was interesting because although I never actually played a show, I ended up doing a bunch of rehearsals with Tension when John left Tension.
Oh, wow.
So I learned all the songs and I did a bunch of things, and then I don't remember what happened, but I never ended up playing any shows. So that was an interesting sort of crossover. Right?
Yeah.
When John had stopped playing Tension and was, I guess, just doing Earthling or whatever at the time.
Yeah.
And then several years later, that was
there's no shortage of incestuous band members.
That's for
on Long
sure.
Island,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that's the way it is.
Just so how does the band come to an end? Because you guys did one more record after that. What is that feeling like?
Well, all right. So we did that record with John. We toured sort of relentlessly.
What do you think of that record? I mean, I like that record a lot.
Abandon Your Friends? It's my... is it my least favorite record? It's my least favorite sort of memory of... It was my least favorite time of the band, even though it was sort of overall the most successful time of the band. It was my least favorite time to be in the band.
Okay.
Because afterwards we just, again, we relentlessly toured on it, and it was just being degraded the entire time, and we were sort of falling apart, and it was not a great time to be in the band. So we ended up taking a bunch of time off, and I ended up playing for Reggie and the Full Effect for a bit.
Oh, that's right.
Fran did Biology.
Right, and Fran did Biology.
We played a show with Fran in in Smithtown, forever ago, and they were on Vagrant too. And that Biology record's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's a good record.
Yeah, good stuff.
And that was that time where everybody's sort of doing other things. I was with Reggie, and Fran did biology, and who knows. Josh Newton joined the band. That was when Mike left the band.
Okay.
And Josh Newton joined the band. Josh, who had played with Shiner and Unsane and everybody else, he's with the Breeders now, which is
he?
Oh wow.
yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
So he's the drummer?
No, he's a guitar player, but he was teching. And then I don't know. I just see this stuff on the internet, man.
That's
I don't
wild.
whatever.
Wow.
But yeah, so Josh, who's like, this sort of dude who's just been doing it forever. He was in Unsane and all these things. Whatever. He joined the band because he was playing with Reggie on that Alkaline Trio tour that I mentioned before, and that's how we met him. And whatever. So that was sort of this crossover. And so Ben. Oh God, so much stuff. Anyway, to make a long story short, we moved into this other phase where we just took off a bunch of time. You're like, we're all gonna do this other stuff. Then we ended up doing Warped Tour. They were like, "Will you do Warped Tour?" Yeah, sure. And we ended up doing it, and we were like, "Oh, this was good. We needed the time off. Everything's all good."
Yeah.
And then we decided, like, all right, well, why don't we write some more tunes? Maybe we'll do a new record because we still had another record to do for Vagrant. So we ended up deciding to go down to Brian McTernan's in Baltimore as opposed to going back to Vancouver.
I have a business question, real quick.
Yes.
Sorry. If you don't make that last record, how does the band get penalized? Like, let's say you break up before that third record gets made. Does the label just eat that? Or
I think the label eats it.
Okay.
I don't think that because
You don't owe anything.
no. I personally don't owe anything.
The only thing they might be able to do is have the right of first refusal on some of the band members that are assigned to the label.
Yeah,
like,
right.
They might be like Brian's next project. There might be a stipulation in your contract, but it's not really like a loan, like a bank,
Right.
where then you owe it monetarily. So it's kind of like a it's like a no
it's like
interest loan.
it's like the
Yeah,
12
exactly.
CDs for a penny deal.
Yeah, basically. And
not at all.
yeah, well, they're not coming after the
Brian's
individual.
like, yeah, wait, no,
They're not
at
coming
all.
after the individual band members at all. And especially because at some point you should sort of create an LLC or something for the band so that they can't
Right.
do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, so that was around the time when we went and we did this record with McTernan, and it ended up just being Fran, myself, and Josh,
because Ben was gone.
Because Ben was gone, John had left, and it was just the three of us. Actually, no, sorry, Ben hadn't left yet. Ben was still in New York, but was gonna come down to do the vocals, and that's when things got weird. When we wrote and recorded the whole record, Ben was gonna come down and do it, and the day he was supposed to come down, he didn't show up. He wrote like an email saying like, "Sorry guys, I'm not gonna do it." And we were like, "Well, that's shit." So
Isn't it strange how like you wait your whole life to do something like this, and you get to that point where you're just like, I don't want to do it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, things were wacky for that dude at the time, and whatever. So we sat around for a few hours, like, well, what do we do? And since Fran had already written the lyrics and done the demos anyway, we were like, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just be the singer? And he said, okay. So a few hours later, he said, all right, I'll do it. And since he had already demoed them and wrote them anyway, it didn't take long.
And he did the screaming and the singing.
Yeah.
So
Right. And he had already recorded the drums for it.
Fran is a really good singer.
He's a good singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a good screamer too.
Yeah.
He's a talented guy. And so that's why it didn't take us long to say like, all right, well, this is what we're gonna do.
Did it feel like the last record? Like while you were making it?
No.
No.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
We had an Australian headlining tour like 3 weeks after the record was supposed to be done that we had to we had to sort somebody out for, and so we did, and Fran ended up singing, and we did it, and it worked out. And then that's sort of how guitar player Rob got involved, because we were just like, all right, well, we need another guitar player. He was a dude I went to school with. He was a guy who played in Domain as well. Yeah. And I was like, well, I know a guy. I know guys. I know guitar players. If you ask me if I know a bass player, I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Except for Dave Case and Josh Newton, both of whom were busy.
Yeah.
Foley Blunts.
But yeah, so that sort of brought us to that, and I do think that last record was certainly my favorite. I thought it was the best record we ever did. It was the way that I thought the band should have always sounded.
Okay.
Without a doubt. I thought it sounded good. It was much less sort of contrived than the other records. Contrived, it's a strong word. It was much less composed than the other records. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit more sort of like, go for it. Mike Schleibaum from Darkest Hour helped us out, because again, it was just the three of us, and we needed another guitar player, and he lived in the area, and he's friends with McTurnan, so he came up and he played the other guitar, not in the recording, but in the writing sessions. So Mike from Darkest Hour really helped out with that, because he added this sort of more ballsy kind of, I don't know, guitar playing. Than I'm much more of a sort of a finesse guy.
Okay.
And he's much more of a, beat the shit out of the guitar guy in the best possible way.
Like Doyle.
Like Doyle, right.
Punching his guitar.
Right.
So when does the band call it quits? I mean, I guess, for me, maybe I always listen to these stories, and obviously as failed musicians, you're thinking wow, how'd you guys do this? This is what everyone waits for. So what was that ending like?
Well, the ending, it was a real sort of, it got, I don't know, we started to become very aware that people, that kids had started to move on. And even though we had seen a bit of a resurgence in attention, with that last record, because it really did sort of reinvigorate the band, the ship had sailed. So unless you had, I don't know, at the time people were getting crazy with fluorescent haircuts, and I don't know, things were getting wacky at that point, right?
2007.
Yeah, about that time, there were these bands that were starting to do all kinds of other things, and we were sort of still doing this other thing, and it just wasn't working. And so we were touring, and then all of a sudden, it really, we started to notice okay, well, there's less and less people showing up, and it's getting depressing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that we felt like we didn't want to play music. It was just that it didn't seem like anybody else wanted to hear us play music.
Right.
And what was your, as a functional, working musician, what was your thought at that time? Were you thinking I got to do something else immediately?
I was thinking, I think at the time I was thinking I could do something else immediately, and that wasn't necessarily the case. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could probably join another band, once this thing is over. And so we decided to play a last show, but we didn't decide to tell anybody that it was the last show. So our last show was kind of subpar, and it was a really, when I say things sort of trickled out, it really did. It wasn't oh, we had this big last blowout and this is it.
Yeah.
It was just, it really sort of limped to the finish line. And
was it a local?
Yeah, it was at the Crazy Donkey, and it was, it was not at all what we really wanted. But it was because we decided that we sort of wanted to leave it open for the future. I don't know. You think of crazy things.
Yeah. When
you don't want to give something up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just no, but you want to stay friends? we're going to be still cool, right, guys? Yeah. Okay. Maybe we want to play music together sometime. And that was sort of what it was like. And it was, And so we didn't allow it to become like, okay, this is the end.
Right.
And that was that.
It's not a bad idea.
No, it's not a bad idea. Yeah. Because years later, we did play a few summers ago, and it was great. And we did several shows. We did a bunch of shows on the West Coast, and we did a bunch of festivals on the East Coast, and it was great. I don't know if that necessarily had anything to do with us not deciding to, to play a last show.
Yeah.
But it was a, like I said, it kind of trickled off. It didn't just end.
Is it over now, or is there still like a possibility you guys would do something?
I don't know. I mean, I could go either way. I'm always down to play.
Right.
Whatever. I would just as quickly play a show in this living room right now.
Would it take John Cox joining the band for you to play again?
I would love to play a show. I would have John Cox and myself playing. I mean, no one besides you guys would be here, but
you're going to be all right if you guys open up the Earthling reunion.
Absolutely, I would open up the Earthling reunion in a second. So no, I don't know. I a few years ago I would have said there'd never be another From Autumn to Ashes show, and that I was proved wrong.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe. If somebody wants to hear it, I'm sure or see it. I'm sure somebody.
If it makes sense, it makes sense. It's that
Right.
It's on the table.
Right. But it's not something that we're talking about.
Right.
At all.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just take a quick break.
We'll take a quick break. Okay, so the next band that I'm aware of that you were in was the band you did with Todd Weinstock, Get Involved.
Yep.
Who was in the band?
So Todd Weinstock, Tucker Rule, Lars Weiss. So Todd was from Glassjaw and Men, Women, and Children, and Tucker's the drummer from Thursday, who was also the drummer for The Wanted, who I played with, and Lars played in Judge. And this dude Derek, that really cheapens what it is. No, this guy Derek Karg Zamudio, who was the singer. Later on, after Lars left, this guy Marcus Price ended up playing bass. But so those are the guys in that band.
And that was still continuing with like heavier music. I know Todd, I was doing Men, Women, and Children, and now he was doing something a little bit heavier.
Right.
And then you guys did a GoFundMe and worked with Russ Robinson.
Yeah.
So how did that all work?
Right. So we started. Well, actually, so Todd came up to me one day. Well, he didn't come up to me. We were hanging out, and he said,
"Right."
He
turned to me.
Right. Exactly. He randomly on the street walked up to me.
Hello.
Hi. So he and I were out, I don't know, probably drinking or something one afternoon. And Todd had said, okay, so I've got this idea, and I've been writing songs with Lars from Judge. And I said, okay, that's an interesting combo. He's like, I kind of just, it's heavy. It's not metal heavy, but it's heavy. And I said, okay, that makes no sense, but all right, cool. He said, do you want to do you want to get involved? No, it wasn't like that. He didn't say, do you want to get involved? And that
Right.
became the name of the thing.
That would have been
it would have, but it wasn't like
I'm
that.
going to edit it to make it sound
Yeah.
like
I
that.
think that should be the
Should do, right?
the way you tell that story.
Yeah. Okay. From now on, I will. Right. So he was like, all right, do you want to be in this? And I said, yeah, of course I do. That sounds great. Because I always loved Todd's playing.
Yeah.
I love Todd as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's just been one of my best friends. Certainly to come out of music.
Yeah.
And he and I are we always find ourselves in sort of funny musical situations and funny non-musical situations as well, I suppose. So and so we started talking like, all right, well, so all right, so now we've got this thing, and he was like, okay, well, we obviously need a drummer now, and I was like, well, obviously Tucker,
Yeah.
because I had been playing with Tucker, and we had just started playing with The Wanted, like. I think maybe we had done one gig together, but Tucker and I had been playing together previously with something else.
So I didn't realize The Wanted was before Get Involved. I thought Get Involved was...
They happened sort of simultaneously.
Okay.
Because The Wanted sort of happened as a one gig, one-off kind of thing at first. And I think that was about the same time. In fact, you know what? Get Involved... This conversation with Todd, with the conversation with me and Todd, probably happened before The Wanted happened. But by the time we all got into a room together, the first Wanted gig had happened.
Okay.
So there's a big overlap here. It was maybe from like September till November that this happened. So it really does overlap.
Okay.
Where at the time I had previously played with Tucker, with I guess a bunch of things. Like I was mentioning to you guys earlier, I literally only play with Tucker.
Yeah.
At this point in my life,
He's your spirit animal.
He is my spirit. He really is.
I think
my
as
spirit
time
animal.
goes on, as long as you keep playing in bands, like the less members you have to look for, the better. So if you always have a drummer, it's like, fuck it. I have a bass player. That's what Dave is to me.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter what I do, he's like, I'm playing, right? I could be fucking in a Paul Simon tribute band. And he would be like, I'm fucking the bass player.
Should be.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's one less person you have to look for.
Right. I mean, if I after all these years now, if I could only choose one drummer to ever play with again, it would be Tucker. And it's not just because I think Thursday's awesome and that we go back a long time. It's just that he and I play together so much. It's we don't have to think.
Right.
And you've all experienced this. You know.
Of course.
It's just he and I have done this over the course of several genres. Mm-hmm. From sort of hardcore-ish stuff or heavy rock. I don't know what do we call this stuff now, right?
We gotcha.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Got it.
Guitar,
Whatever.
bass, and drums.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like heavy-ish stuff. But whatever. So from that to literally boy band music to he and I had done some other stuff with Todd earlier on that was more dancey. Whatever. There's a lot of stuff that we do or that we've done, and if I could play with anybody in the world, it would always be Tucker. But I digress.
I could hear his heart melting wherever he is.
Yeah.
He's like driving down the New Jersey Turnpike right now.
I mean, you guys can't see it, but every time he says Tucker, he does a little heart symbol with the two hands.
Literally. I'm also, I'm just texting him as we speak.
So then
Should do.
With The Wanted, did that sort of like stall Get Involved because you got so busy?
Yeah.
Tell that story about The Wanted, because that's so, such a different, it's such a, like a big part of what happened to you, but I don't really know the backstory of how that all happened.
Right. So again, I defer to Tucker.
Tucker did the little heart symbol.
Right. Yeah, did it again. So right around the time that we started playing together with Get Involved, Tucker, he just texted me one day and said, I was just talking to somebody over at Island, at Def Jam, and because Thursday had once been on Island, and I guess he stayed in touch with some people, and at the time Thursday had been slowing down. They were calling it quits. They're back now, but whatever. He had, I guess, mentioned to this guy, who was in charge of a bunch of stuff, that Thursday was, again, slowing down. And he said, if there's anything that you need, a session player, whatever, I don't know, the things that we say to people when we don't know what to do next.
Yeah. If you
I mean, if you
if you need anything, give me a call.
If you need anything, give me a call.
If you could do it, that's like fucking why not? That's like
sure.
It's better than bartending. You're like, I'll play drums. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's also this at the same time, like, well, this is a shot in the dark. Just because you can do something in one situation doesn't necessarily mean you're good at it in another situation. However, Tucker's very good at that, and the I think Tucker is an amazing people's person. He everybody likes this guy, and there's a reason for it. It's because he's a great guy and he's a great player, so he backs it all up.
Right.
And that's the point.
You're talking about a drummer, right?
I am talking about a drummer.
That's weird.
Shocking, right? It's shocking. So anyway, so he texted me one day and says, "All right, I just talked to this dude at Island, and he had asked me, he said, okay, I've got this English boy band coming over to do a showcase. They're already really big in the UK, but there's a problem with visas or something for their band. Can you play?"
Amazing.
And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, like whatever. We have 3 days of rehearsal and that's it. I said, "All right, cool." So I ended up doing it. Eric Oddness from Primitive Weapons, who's also, sort of another Tucker
people person,
right? So the three of us ended up saying, "Yeah, let's do this." And this guy Dave Whitney, who was their musical director at the time, he was a Scottish guy. He's an amazing musician and an amazing person. He started contacting us, just being like, "Okay, well, now that you guys are signed on, this is what I need you to do, blah, 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 blah. We're going to meet at this rehearsal spot on this date. We have 3 days to do it, and then there's the gig. And by the way, no pressure. It's the most important thing that they'll ever do."
Wow.
Because it was their first show in the States.
Right.
How many songs did you have to learn?
12 or 13. It was a full headline. There was no... there may have been an opening band, but it was full headlining set. It was at the Gramercy. And it had been sold out for months.
Wow.
Amazing.
No pressure.
No pressure, exactly. And we didn't meet the boys, the Wanted Boys, the singers, until soundcheck that day.
That's so
at the gig.
Wild.
And Justin Skirty actually teched for us that day.
Really?
Which is funny because we were like, it was so bare bones. We had a front of house engineer, a monitor engineer, and the band. And they were like, "Okay, well, I guess, do you guys know anybody who could handle
Teching?
Backline techs?" And Tucker, and we were all like, "Well, Skirty,
right.
obviously." So Skirty was there as well for the first the maiden voyage.
Nice.
Is it a band like the other? There's 3 guys in the Wanted.
5.
So are they a band?
They're singers.
So they don't play anything.
Well, they do, but they don't regularly play. There's 5 singers. It's a boy band.
Okay, gotcha. Because
I'm
I'm
trying
trying
to
to
the
think
Backstreet Boys, but like not as sort of,
All right, so but I'm saying like if you meet
not as costumey.
Yeah, if you meet at soundcheck, I'm just wondering if any of them are going to step on your toes.
No. I mean, they had their own band back in the UK, and at the time we were just filling in for one gig. Like it was just that they had trouble with visa things, and there was a label issue, whatever. So we did the gig, and again, it was their first show in the States. It was their first show in New York, and these girls had been camped out for like 2 days in front of this small theater,
right.
and it was like, oh, that's strange. Like, and so they had already been a thing. Their first U.S. single, worldwide single hadn't come out yet. Then it did, and we were asked to do the Ellen show, like a few weeks later, to fly to L.A. like last minute. We said, okay.
So do Ellen Degeneres?
Yeah. So we flew to LA and did it. And then from there on, they were like, okay, yeah, the first US tour starts like next week. And so we ended up doing that too. So all of a sudden there was this US band, then there was also this UK band, and because they did this small US tour, and then they went home and did their first arena tour with their UK band, which was an interesting sort of trade-off after being with us for a bit. And then so we...
What does UK Brian look like?
Yeah. Is that bizarre
UK
word?
Brian is this dude named Murray, and he's an amazing guitar player, and he's a super sweet guy. He's got long, curly, sort of Marty Friedman hair.
Marty Friedman.
Yeah.
I feel like Marty Friedman came up again. Okay, that's funny, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, so Murray is UK Brian.
Cool.
And whatever. So anyway, they did that arena tour. They started blowing up worldwide, and what happened was they started just being in the States so much more, and not in the UK. So they, at some point, they had to make a decision, which band would they choose, and they ended up choosing the US band, and
Wow.
and that was it.
Wow.
And so we ended up spending 4 years with them.
How time consuming was it to be in the band?
It was full time. It was, I don't know.
But I'm saying, well, you just like on tours.
Yeah, it was always
All the time. Yeah.
Especially for me, because I was the guitar player, so I had to do all the promo, all the radio promo, all the acoustic business, all the, whatever. So I was always sort of with them.
Right.
So anytime they had to do 10 live radio programs in a day, I was there playing the same song.
Was it
every
like
day.
a similar world or a different world?
From
Just like what you were used to at that point, like.
It was an entirely different world.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been any. It couldn't. The difference between playing at the Agora with in Cleveland with Bob Farley at the helm. Again, love Bob Farley, and the four of us or five of us. Wow. I don't know who I left out, but it was Smalley.
We won't. Yeah.
Right. And this was it was another planet. When you're talking about, okay, well, now you're doing headlining arena tours where there's 60 traveling crew and nine trucks and tons of buses, and you're flying here and there.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
All day. You're going to New York to LA, back to New York in the same day to play each time, or flying to Malaysia to play one 45-minute set just to fly back home the next day.
Fuck.
Jesus
Right?
Christ.
Things
That's
like that. Yeah.
crazy.
So again, like that's what was that. That it was. It's very different.
And you played the Garden
3 times.
three
Wow.
times.
3 times.
When I was texting you about this, I was looking through my old Facebook IMs, and I must have posted something on Facebook like I'm in Manhattan, and then you wrote me. We were talking about the band, and it's like, what are you doing? Like I'm talking about playing whatever hole in the wall on Long Island, which is capacity 60. And Brian's like, I'm at the Garden opening for Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the last time we talked. Which is,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a wild experience. I don't know.
Can't
And
beat
what
that.
happened?
Well, they, as pop musicians do, they all feel like they, need to sort of
Go solo.
spread their wings and,
Yeah.
and go elsewhere, right?
And 4 years is a long time for that.
It is a long time. Yeah, exactly.
They probably all grew mustaches by then. And
Right. Exactly. Yeah, there's all kinds of hair happening.
Fred Savage type.
Right.
Years.
Right. And so that's what happened. They decided to call it quits. It just wasn't working. in the same way that it
Any band.
didn't work for anybody else.
Any band, yeah.
You know, they're real people, and I'd like to emphasize that they're not machines. They're you know, sure there's a lot of things you could say about it, but there are real people, and they had real issues, and family members die, and there's, you know, they have real things.
So you got kind of close to them the whole time, right?
We got very close to them.
Cool.
We were very, very, very close to them, and still talk to all of them all the time.
Really?
To all the boys, yeah.
Because my image of it, and this is like prejudicial, but that would be because it's a boy band, because of the way you enter the band, that you're a prop, you're behind them, doesn't, you know, but that's not
Well,
the
it
case.
started out like that,
Yeah.
sure, but then
But you're right, they're human. Like we just think of it differently,
right?
Like,
and you end up living with these people, and especially, you know, there's an onstage sort of relationship that even the rest of the crew doesn't have, right? Where you're actually making music,
right?
They are actually singing, and we are actually playing, and we're doing it together. So there is a thing for sure. And we got very close with those guys. And you know, I when they're in town, you know, doing other things or whatever, yeah, I see them. We all see them.
What an experience to have as a musician, regardless. Like 4 years to basically play something like that, even, you know, regardless of what anyone would think. You know, you're up there, like you said, 5 real people, and you're fucking playing the Garden. You're playing all these places that maybe you wouldn't have gotten a chance to play. And, like, you know, 20 years from now, you could always, like, that's, like, amazing to have in the memory bank. Be like, hey, remember that one time? Super cool.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that those guys are cool, and whenever they come and you guys are all like, can't beat that. It's a great 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better group of guys to have sort of done that with, and the crew guys as well. Like those are the people I talk to the most.
Yeah.
Still, or the Wanted band and crew and those guys. But the boys themselves, yeah, they were great. And
a step is like, you know, you want to make a career out of playing music, and 4 years on the resume just has to be like, from there you meet so many people. It's like, oh, Brian was cool, you know, talented guitar player. It's like, we could use him for this. And I feel like, I don't know, because I'm not in your shoes, but like you know, I feel like it's something that it's like a you know, like you jump from job to job because you gotta, you know, I guess the future's unwritten type thing, you know, and you just want to keep working and making music.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Make those relationships.
And that's, you know, what ended up happening anyway. I ended up playing for, well, almost exclusively English artists, English pop singers after the Wanted.
Yeah.
You know, which isn't a big shocker coming from that, because those are the people that I, you know, became friends with. And so I ended up playing for Ella Henderson and Rita Ora and, you know, and a few others. But yeah, that world becomes very comfortable where you become sort of this pop guitar player session dude, as opposed to the guy in the band, right? You know, which is a totally different job, right? It's a completely different job, and some people I understand can't make that transition. Yeah, you know, it is a different job being the guitar player in the band or being the guitar player for the singer, right? And
I would do it in a minute. Just if anyone's listening, I'm ready,
guys.
Nuno Betancourt.
I got Nuno over here.
Yeah. So yeah, Nuno went from like extreme to like Rihanna.
Exactly.
And does this thing. So.
Yeah, and it's a real thing that you have to. There are certain attributes, I think, for certain people that where you need to have in order to be at least a working touring session guitar player, and that's, you know, you just can't mess up. You can't show up fucked up. You can't.
Got to show up early, stay late.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can't be late. You can't be an asshole. You can't be this and that. It's actually pretty simple, really. If you're a decent player you're cool to be around,
Right.
and you show up on time. I don't know. It seems pretty natural to me. Obviously, you have to be put into the situation in the first place.
Right.
It's not like, okay, guys, everybody does this. But if you are presented with the situation...
Once you enter that matrix...
That's the thing. And plenty of people fuck it up.
Yeah.
Plenty of people fuck it up all day long.
Because they think they can handle... I mean, we all know talented guys.
And that's the
it's
problem.
It's easy to imagine them not being able to show up at noon.
Yep.
And do...
Right. Or show up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or 3. When you play Good Morning America, you got to be there at 3 in the morning.
Right. Wow.
No dicking around.
Yeah. 3 in the morning, ready to play.
Right.
So it's like, oh, all right, well, the guy who was up the night before, yeah, okay, I don't know. Might not be the guy who can do it. Because once you, and another thing is once in that world, once you really fuck it up.
That's it.
You're not getting another gig.
Right.
Word
they can
of
find
mouth,
somebody else.
References, word of mouth, like stuff like that.
Exactly.
With anything in life, really. Just like
exactly.
You don't want to hire them.
It's the same as when you go to a job interview.
Yeah.
You want to show up like an asshole? No. You know what I mean? You just have to keep doing the job interview every day.
Right. Even before the podcast started, we were talking about bands that trouble followed them.
Right.
And that fucked up.
Exactly.
Right. Their future careers on Warped Tour.
Exactly.
Or, why they couldn't get on Ozfest, and why when promoters are looking to book their band, they just flip right past you because they heard something bad about the crew that likes to fight or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's the same thing. It's like you get to a certain level, professional people want to deal with professional people.
Yep. Yeah. It's the same as I'm assuming in the, if you're in the corporate world or something like that.
Sure.
Nobody's going to hire somebody who fucked up their last job.
Right.
Or didn't do the right thing or whatever.
Yeah, you can't beat people up at the water cooler.
Exactly.
But it's weird. I think in music though, it's going to bring, at least in many occasions, a different element, because so many artists can be talented but have baggage of being a fuck up. It's tolerated for many years, maybe before you get popular. In the corporate world, that doesn't, you fuck up very early, it's over. But in music, the most talented people sometimes can't handle some of those things, or they just can't handle not being in charge or putting in their input when they're not supposed to, or whatever it is. So it's like that's what artists can bring, is a lot of that baggage. So that's like it's just different than a corporate world.
There's definitely another dimension there, or another sort of layer.
Yeah.
But that, I think, only applies to the artist themselves, not necessarily the people who work for them. The people who work for them have to still be the people who toe the line and do it. You have to be somebody who's. But
I just think the people who are attracted to working in that industry might be fucked up artists.
Oh, absolutely.
Where they're not,
yeah.
People that are attracted to work in the corporate world will probably walk in, and if they fuck up day one, they're out.
Right.
But, artists might be playing guitars for years, and then by the time they get that opportunity, they've got a lot of bad behavior behind them. So it's like it just attracts a different person.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the same guy who's doing the corporate job is probably not going to be the same guy who's the fuck up bass player for whatever. Yeah.
There's only one Keith Richards, is what we're trying to say.
Right, exactly. But again, like I said, when it comes to the artists, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
It doesn't really matter. There's somebody there to handle them.
Yeah. Right. Did you ever watch the documentary Hired Gun?
Yes, I have.
Do you feel like akin to that world?
Yeah,
definitely. Right.
I mean, I some of those guys are really lucky. Most of those guys are really lucky.
Yeah.
In terms of the gigs they have.
You could text me the names later.
Yeah, we'll do. But they're because what that video is totally accurate.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, very cool. I just like the fact that, first of all, I could watch a music documentary on anything. And I like the fact that they show that other world, because those are people that don't get as much shine. And it was like a nice movie to see. All these people that kind of just hold it together, like the Pink people or...
That band is amazing.
Yeah.
I met them doing a Wanted gig.
Monsters.
They're ridiculous. They're like 20 years older than Pink is.
Yeah. Totally.
These guys are just like pros that are awesome.
Yeah.
You know, they look like they should be in Aerosmith or something, and
The drummer definitely should be
yeah,
in Aerosmith.
but they're rippers. I mean, like really, their playing is amazing. They're spot on. They're totally cool. They're totally supportive of the younger bands. When I met them, we had played right before them, and we were walking off stage in London, and they were like, outstanding work. I was like, that was great. That was awesome. I was like, cool. Thanks, Pink.
Yeah,
Band
Pink Band.
guys,
Yeah.
but I don't know your name, but whatever, you guys are awesome, you know. And then I watched them and I was like, Jesus, okay, yeah, I get it. These are like, you know, sort of LA session dudes who have been doing it for ages, and they know how to do their craft.
I love it.
And there's something special about that, and
There is.
there's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with like sort of with that being your job.
I love watching it because it's like watching a ninja. It's like a master.
You're
Completely.
absolutely
Master.
right.
Like you
Yeah.
see, like you're like, wow, you guys are. This is your job. It's for the most part not really your band, but you're there and you're killing it. You know.
And you're so, no pun intended, instrumental to the product, right? I mean, you
Right.
are the thing. You know, the thing wouldn't happen without that. Otherwise, it would just be Pink standing there twirling around on a thing.
Right.
You know, her band is what makes the thing happen.
Right.
If Pink were just playing to or singing to a track, it would be silly.
Right.
Yeah.
She's way beyond that. You
Right.
know, so these guys have to be awesome. And the thing about being in sort of the live band that plays with an artist that probably whose records probably don't have a live band on them.
Right.
Right. You have to. The playing has to be bigger. It has to sound better. It has to be heavier for that. You know, and I'm air quoting right now. And that's what the Wanted Boys always said to us. Literally, every day we would play. They'd be like, "Yo, how can you make that heavier? How can you make that sound more like this or that?" Like,
Really?
absolutely. So now you've got the front of house guy being like, this guy Andrew, who is like the greatest dude in the world. He would just be like, we'd come off stage and be like, yeah, I just made that, like, you know, I basically made that sound like it was like a Slayer show.
That's great.
Basically, I just made that thing just destroy like all of these 14-year-old girls. Like, there's 20,000 14-year-old girls here that are now like
Earaches.
deaf.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like hum guitars.
Exactly. Yeah, and just like, you know, just and the you know, a couple of, you know, most of the boys would just always be like, how do we make it sound more like a rock band? They were always sort of striving for being legitimate.
Did they know where you guys came from?
Yes.
So they
Didn't at first, not when they met us, but
Yeah.
after knowing us, yeah. And there's like there's an interview out there somewhere where they basically exclusively talk about the guys in the band, which is funny. And that was really it. And they were always just really, that was part of their thing. They were trying to be legitimate with their backing. They were like, we know we're a boy band, but we don't want to be the Backstreet Boys. We don't want to be like gospel chopsy sort of, you know, whatever predictable, you know, whatever that sound that you think of.
Yeah.
Right? It was just, we want to make it sound like a rock band. And if that's what we can, because they didn't dance, they didn't do anything like that. They were just 5 idiots running around singing, 5 singers bouncing off each other.
one mic.
One mic, sharing. Everybody just shared one mic. They fought over it, and that was it. So that's sort of how it was, and they were always sort of trying to make it bigger, more rock like. They, you know, again, it was a sort of this search for legitimacy,
And it must have stood out
cool.
on a bill.
It totally did. It totally did. When you go and play with, you know, you do these radio shows and stuff with DJs and this and that, and then you show up there with a metal band. Right. Essentially, we weren't playing metal, but you know,
essentially pretty much a metal.
Yeah,
band.
I mean, and we made it as heavy as we could.
Yeah,
and that's you know,
it was
that's
like
that.
You know, I'm just picturing like Slayer minus Tom Araya.
Right? Yeah, that's
Five.
basically it. Yeah, minus the, you know, the atonal guitar solos and things like that. But you know,
to backtrack back to Get Involved, we were talking about the the crowdfunding thing, right?
Yeah.
With Todd.
Right.
Todd had that idea. I don't know anything about it.
And you used
How
it
did that go?
to record with Ross.
We did, yeah.
That was the reason to record with him?
It was, yeah, because Todd knew Ross from doing the Glassjaw records, and so Ross did it for us for a very reasonable price, and so that's what we did, and there was a lot of people that wanted to be involved in the process.
Is he everything that I think he is?
Ross Robinson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a weirdo.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he's cool. Yeah, he's a good guy.
I was just listening.
Total weirdo.
I was listening to Tony Hajar from At the Drive-In on Dean Del Rey's podcast, where he had some interesting stories, and if you want to listen to that, whoever's listening, it's pretty good on At the Drive-In recording with Ross Robinson.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ross is nuts. I mean, in a good way.
In a good way.
But like totally nuts.
He knows what he wants to get, right?
Yeah. He's like the most intense person I've ever met, but at the same time, the most laid back person I've ever met. Like when he wants something out of the situation, he gets it, but it's
not fun.
It was fine for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have to sing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
heard.
Like
that status could be on drag.
Drummers and singers.
That's
God, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. Probably.
I just went in there and played guitar. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like,
I hear he's super hard on drummers and singers. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Gruesome.
Okay. That's brutal.
But I mean, he's got all the right ideas. It's just he's very sort of visceral. He's very kind of so involved in the process. It's to the point where even he doesn't do things to a click.
Right.
He will sort of in pre-production or even when he's doing the drums, he'll with the scratch tracks, the singer he'll sit there and sort of manipulate he'll just have like some crappy little Boss delay pedal, and that's how he controls the tempo. So he'll manipulate the delay of that pedal to what the drummer's playing, and so that way he can do it. So he has a map.
Okay.
And that's how he does it. It's not to a click. Like, it's not a metronome. It's bizarre.
That's really strange.
But in other words, he can still maintain, a modern recording situation, right? Where he's got it in Pro Tools and he can do it. But he has it in a sense where he's doing it, he's manipulating it in real time.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. I've never seen that before in my life.
I mean, I always liked, I felt like he sort of roughed up Glassjaw.
Right.
Because that's what that first record was like.
Yeah.
It was different than they kind of messed up their hair or something, just made them a little bit more aggro.
Right.
And, I've heard the stories with Korn and, Deftones and Limp Bizkit and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw anything as crazy as what I heard.
Daryl's told me stories. It was just like, he's screaming at me.
I only did an EP, though, so I don't know. I never did anything that crazy.
He's like the Chef Ramsay of engineers.
Right.
So is Get Involved done?
Get Involved is a thing that happens when it happens.
When it happens.
And that's that. It's always there.
Right.
So.
And now you're doing Heavy Vessel.
Heavy Vessel.
With, stop me if you've heard this before, Tucker.
Yeah. And Eric from Primitive Weapon. Basically, it's the Wanted's backing band.
Wow.
Actually, not basically. No, it is the Wanted's backing band.
Right. Who's singing?
This guy Brian Louie, who's actually the guy who wrote all the stuff.
Okay.
And recorded it. And he's an amazing singer songwriter. He just decided that he had to, he wanted to play shows and was friends with Tucker, I guess, or Eric. He's actually friends with Matt Krapansky, who used to play drums in Boy Sets Fire. He's from Delaware. And I don't know, somehow met those guys and they introduced him to me. I don't know. That's how it all worked out. So basically, Again, the Wanted's backing band is now doing this thing.
Put that on the flyers.
Put that on the flyers, right?
Ex-Wanted.
Exactly. Ex-Wanted. Ex-Wanted.
FATA. Ex-Wanted.
Yeah. Right. Could happen.
Yeah, why not?
Right. So that's what it is. But he's a great songwriter, and I think the songs are really good.
Yeah, it's
Sort
great.
of
I wrote the other day. The EP is
Right.
awesome.
Oh, I didn't even know there was an EP.
Bandcamp.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very good. And again, I'm not on it.
Okay.
So I can
You're
say
not
that
on
it's
it?
very good.
Then I'm not
No, I
listening.
mean, none of us are on it. Brian's the only one on it.
I didn't realize.
He wrote and recorded everything himself. We've played several shows,
Right.
But yeah, he's the guy. So it's a really cool,
Cool. I'll check it
really
out.
cool record. And we're starting to play a lot more shows.
What does it sound like? Just description
It's,
for the peoples.
gosh, if I have to, it's sort of Queens of the Stone Age meets shoegazy kind of stuff.
Listen, say no more.
Okay.
I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm a
think you got
huge Queens of the Stone Age.
All right.
fan.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a shoegazy Queens of the Stone Age thing.
I'm speaking my language.
He's looking. I'm not good at descriptions,
Either.
so I'll say it's like Napalm Death meets the Sugar Cubes.
Oh,
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
All right, it's like the Dixie Chicks meets Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Dixie Chick.
I can go on. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's gonna matter.
One more. It's like
So-
Manowar meets.
But I saw that you won this BMI thing,
Yeah.
and like just overall, you do more than just playing in a band as far as music, right?
Yeah. Right.
Because it's interesting to me. We were talking with Vinny Caruana from the Movie Life, and he does writing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So what is it that you do exactly beyond being in the band?
Well, I do a lot of writing for TV commercials and things like that. So
Is there like you work for a company, or they just hire
I freelance.
you? Freelance.
But yeah, I've done a lot. I've done for Toyota and Domino's and McDonald's and
Really?
yeah.
just guitar or like everything.
No. In fact, it's rarely any guitar.
Okay.
Just I don't know. We don't like to say, you don't say jingles, but
Okay. Got it.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Advertising stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's a sweet gig, I think.
Yeah.
Anytime I hear people say that, it's just like anytime you could make a living playing music, I don't give a fuck what it is.
And that's exactly the right
That's it.
thing to say.
know?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Plus, the cool thing about that, I would imagine, it doesn't take away from like you want to play in Heavy Vessel, you go do it at night. It's like
Right.
it doesn't,
Right. Yeah. No. Doing stuff like that is just you're sort of you're subject to what the deadline is, but other than
Yeah.
that, you're just playing with Heavy Vessel is usually dependent on when the four of us can get into a room.
Right.
So doing stuff like that is stuff that you can do at home, but it's also stuff that has to be done. I'll usually get an email at 5:00 at night that says, "Hey, I have this thing. Can you do it by 7 a.m. tomorrow?" And you're like, "Absolutely."
You always have to say yes, right? No matter what.
Right? Yeah, because if you don't, then somebody else is going to do it, and then they're not going to ask you again.
Right.
Yeah.
But as far as playing in a band and like getting back on the road and all of that, are you looking to do it with a band like Heavy Vessel, like your stuff, or something again like the Wanted?
Well, that's quite the question.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, Jesus. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I'd love to. I love playing shows. I love being out. This and that. Do I want to start a new band in the sense that I want to go and try to slug it out? Probably not.
Right.
Is it because it's a different world?
It's a different world, and I have other. I was once 20. I'm 32 37 now, and I'm
You're old man Brian now.
I'm
basically.
old man Brian, right? Right, exactly. It was once old man Steve.
health
Now I'm
insurance
old.
now?
Yeah, I have health insurance now, right? Exactly. But really, it's I don't know. But then at the same time, like if Katy Perry decided to call me up tomorrow,
well, yeah,
see you.
Yeah.
I'll totally do it.
Right, but the getting in the van, doing it the way FATA did it, probably not.
Probably not. No.
But an established band that wants to hire you, that you would do.
Yeah, and that's what I do sometimes anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's not because of any other reason than as you reach a certain age and you have bills and you have
money.
and you need money and that's all it is. It's I'm no longer just looking out for myself.
Yeah.
So this is what I do for a living. So I have to do things that are.
You did everything. If you ask me, what more can you do? You're situated. You're making a living off of playing music.
I could be Todd Weinstock because he does.
What does he do?
He also DJs. I don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, he does, and that's
so
fun.
he does all the things that I just mentioned, and he DJs. I don't do that. So
I used to DJ, probably nowhere near that level, and that's the funnest shit you could do. That's great.
Todd's another one of my heroes.
What does he?
Friend heroes. My friendos.
He plays. What does he do?
He's got projects all the time. I don't even know. He's got a new thing right now that he's doing. I think he just had a single, and he just did a bunch of festivals or something in Texas or something like last week. I don't know. Every time I talk to Todd, he's doing something crazy, which is awesome. Yeah.
But you were in a band with Jeff Warsaw, and that is something that Todd has not done, and not a lot of people can say.
That's a good point. No, I guess that's a good point. Jeff Warsaw is the man. I mean, we could have done this entire thing about Jeff.
I realized he did not come up in the domain section of this interview.
I was going to crowbar him.
I can't believe I didn't say his name.
That's funny.
I was going to crowbar him, but I didn't get a chance.
What's funny is that Jeff was not a founding member of the band.
Okay.
Jeff came in later after he played in Donald Dick.
Okay.
So, Jeff was a finisher of the band for sure.
Yeah.
He wasn't a starter, but he definitely was a finisher.
Was he invited for his hair?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, he still had his hair when he was in the band.
Right. But I couldn't get through the whole episode without mentioning.
No, I mean,
Stranger in a Strange Land podcast.
And
I love that name because I hope it's an Iron Maiden reference.
Yes.
Okay, I was talking to him today and I never even asked him. But
I mean, Jeff Warsaw is an enigma. He's a fantastic, intelligent person who really sees the bigger picture.
He sees the bigger picture.
I can't get further into it without.
He's like, I want to say, I enjoy how he trolls online, but I think the word troll,
relentless.
Like he elevates the word troll,
or
troll is not a good enough word for him.
Yeah,
because he's really good at it and really funny.
Yeah,
like smart in a way that other people don't do. And I enjoy. His
he's relentless.
I love what he does with the New York
News Day.
Is it Long Island 12? What is it? 12?
Maybe Channel 12.
Channel 12, whatever it is. Yeah,
it's
News 12. Yeah.
Today he told me how he loves attention, so he's gonna love this last part of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, they don't make him better than Jeff when it comes to trolls. He's
good.
He's elevated it. You're absolutely right. It's become its own thing.
Right.
He's just fantastic. He's exquisite.
We got one more.
We got one more. You want to go for it, Sam?
Sure. So the name of the show is called If I Rule the World. So at the end of every episode, we like to ask our guests, Brian, if you ruled the world, what would that look like?
Oh, man. I'd probably hand it off to Jeff Warsaw. I think that would probably be what I would do.
And you want to know what? He would gladly take it.
He would take it, and I'd be fine with just sort of going somewhere else with it. I don't want the responsibility, so I'd give it to Jeff.
Okay.
So Jeff,
That's-
if and when you listen to this, I've handed it off to you.
Okay.
I like your answer. The way it turns out, if he rules the world, we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But he's got it. So
He's got it.
You can blame me.
All right.
That's it.
Brian, thanks so much, brother.
You
It was
got it,
great
man.
catching up.
Absolutely.
All right. And that's it. We'll talk soon.
Cool. Thank you for doing it, and good night.
Good night.
If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.